Hey guys, how are you? How you doing? And welcome back to another video on Sorare Josh. As you might have been able to tell by the title, we're going to be picking one player from every single Premier League team, which I think is going to have a good season, but they're not the top stars. They're not the people who are going to cost you the most from that team, but I'm hoping they can get some really great Sorare scores for you guys. I'm going to try and do this all in one take, so please bear with me. It might not be perfect, but we are trying, and we are going to jump straight in with our first player, Luis Sinistera from Bournemouth, the Colombian man, and I think this season he could have a big part to play under Iraola. He is a forward card, which is fantastic, and his price is ranging anywhere from £5 to £10. And for this video, we are going to be using Sorare data, which I think everyone needs. It shows you the scores, it shows you the prices, and we can show you them in-season prices, which is what we are aiming for. Now, I think he will start this opening weekend. He's played a great couple of games in pre-season. He scored a couple of goals. He was kept out of the season by injury at the end. And I do think that he will have a really big part to play in Bournemouth's team this season. He is going to be able to play on the left. He's going to be able to play on the right. But I just think Bournemouth's team, they're strengthening. They've sold Solanke, but they are signing Evan Nilsson from Porto. And I just really think that front three, if it clicks, he could have a massive part to play. As we jump into Arsenal, we've got Gabriel Martinelli, still under 23, and you do get that utility till July the 1st, 2025. Now, Martinelli, we know last season he ended up being on the subs bench. He didn't have the best end to the season. However, I do think he will muscle his way back into Mikel Arteta's plans for the season. And at his price, I don't think it's too bad. I think for an Arsenal winger, an Arsenal forward card, £30 to £40 if he can get his way back into the starting 11. I think he will be great. He's obviously a Brazil international. He will have that Champions League midweek utility. And I just think if he can get back in there and he can start scoring well again, like we know Gabriel Martinelli can, and he can get into this type of form where he's getting goals and assists, I think he could have a really big part to play in Arsenal's title challenge for this season. Likewise with that, we have then got Ian Maatsen, finally back in the Premier League on loan at Dortmund last season. Bombing forward left back, still under 23 for another year and a half until 2026. He's 22. He might get back into that Netherlands starting lineup as well. But for the prices, I think you're looking at £15 to £20. And for Ian Maatsen, obviously he was on loan last season. He was playing in the Champions League, so he's already got their Champions League experience, which Aston Villa will be having this season. But these types of scores here, they're fantastic. He bombs on. He's a wonderful fullback. And I think Aston Villa have got a great player on their hands, also having that midweek utility. As we move into Brentford, this was a hard choice. I wasn't too sure who to pick. Obviously, you've got your Tony, you've got your Mbermo. However, I think Fatali Yanel goes under the radar for Brentford. He scores consistently. He doesn't tend to have too big of a peaks. However, for them consistent scores, if you're looking to play cap modes, or even someone who will just score you that 50, 55 points every single week in your Premier League team, for not too bad of a price, I think Fatali Yanel could be that man. He's only 26. He plays for Germany. He's from Germany, sorry. He could get into that Germany team. But his price, you're looking at anywhere from £5 to £10, £11 at most. And if we do look at his scores, he consistently gets them scores in. His average is 49 over the last 15 and 48 over the last 40 games. And I think in the Premier League, Brentford's form last season, it wasn't fantastic. They've made a couple of signings. Obviously, Fabio Carvalho brought in from Liverpool. They wasn't in the best form last season, and if they can pick that form up, I think his scores, combined with Brentford picking their form up, he could be a great cheap option for your midfield this season. As we then move into Brighton, someone who's on a bit of a longer term contract, 3 years left on his Brighton contract, but we bring in Jean-Paul Van Heck from Brighton. He was injured towards the end of last season. You're going to be looking at £15 to £20 for a Premier League centre-back. And his scores when he plays, he was injured here at the end of last season. When he plays, he is magnificent. He might be able to force his way into that Netherlands team as well. But he wasn't able to play here. But his peak scores down here, they are fantastic. Obviously, they were playing in Europe at the end of last season. But his scores are wonderful. And I think for £15 to £20, he could be the choice in your Brighton team or stack. Lavia for Chelsea. We've taken a punt, and this might be a big punt, but he started in pre-season. They have a lot of midfielders. They've got a lot of everything, to be honest, at Chelsea. However, I do believe that Lavia can force his way in and become part of that Chelsea midfield this season. And for £15 to £20, I think he could return you that investment. Now, Obviously, he hasn't played. We don't have any of the stats based on it. He came back for one game against Crystal Palace. He went off injured. But we know how he played for Southampton before that. He's a really good player. He's only 20. He's still got that under 23 utility if you're looking to play that competition. But this season for Chelsea, there's so many choices. And I think we could end up with that nailed on midfield of Lavio, Caicedo and Fernandes, depending on how they play in the opening weeks of the season. And we'll move into another midfielder. I could sit here all day and rant and rave at you guys about Adam Wharton. Honestly, he is incredible. He's the same age as Lavia. He signed for Crystal Palace. They've got him on that long-term contract. They've also got the under-23 utility until 2028. But Adam Wharton, for the prices, yes, he's a little bit of a premium at £30. But Adam Wharton, mark my words, will be one of the best centre midfielders in the Premier League this season. Look at these scores here. If we take out the England games and we just come to the Premier League, he was only learning the Premier League here. He came on against Brighton. He made that mistake. We all know he did. He gave the ball away his first touch and he said it shocked him. However, his scores ever since, he will go from midfield to attack flawlessly. And I think Adam Wharton, even for the higher teams, he could be a vital part of your team for this season. As we move into someone who is injured for the start of the season, however, I think his price is currently reflecting that, as people do know it. However, Jared Branthwaite, under 23 until 2026. It's been a bit of a theme so far, to be fair. Not intentionally. He will not start the opening game against Brighton. I am very, very aware of that. However, if we look at his scores, and his price, £16 to £25 for Jared Branthwaite. And now we look at his scores. He is a top scorer, and you could even partner him up with Pickford and run that Everton defensive stack. We know that they're strong defensively. Sean Dyche loves a strong defence, but Jared Branthwaite scores fantastically, and who knows, a bigger move could be on the cards in the future. However, I think for right now, he will miss an opening couple of games, like I said. He's in the England setup now. But I think for that price, Jared Branthwaite could be a great underrated pickup for your teams this season. As we move into Fulham, Fulham have made a lot of signings. They made a lot of good signings in Smith Rowe, etc., etc. However, Timothy Castagne, the bombing forward right back himself, the Belgian man, his price, £6 to £7 for a fullback in this. And this is what I'm trying to do to make it a bit more affordable for people. If you are joining Sorare for the first time, you're not going to want to be paying for them superstars straight away. You're going to want to learn the game along the way. Obviously, goalkeepers have that more premium because there's only one per position. But Castagne, he will score well. He will get these peak scores. He will bomb on down that right-hand side for Fulham. And I think he could be a great pickup at £7 to £8 with these scores. And we know he will start, as he started 98% of Fulham's last 40 games. As we move into Ipswich, the unknown of the Premier League. Do we know how they're going to play? Absolutely not. They're making a few great signings. Calvin Phillips, Sammy Szmodics from Blackburn. And they are also signing another striker from Napoli, I believe it is. But they've signed Amari Hutchinson. They've got him from Chelsea. They tried and they got him in the end. Only 20, the Jamaican international, giving you that under 23 utility until 2028. But his price, I think he's worth the chance on. Anything kind of from £12 to £20 you could look at paying for Amari Hutchinson. But in the Championship, he lit it up. And yes, he's going to have to try, obviously, to transition into the Premier League. But if he can do that, and he's not got an easy opening couple of games, don't get me wrong, against Liverpool and Man City, but if he can transfer some of that Championship form to the Premier League and at the age he's at and keep progressing, I think he could be a worthwhile pickup for your squads. So we move into Leicester. We've got Wilfred Ndidi. He is Mr. Consistent. Leicester were a really hard team to choose. However, he got back into that team at the end of last season. He's like Janel. He scores consistently. He plays well. And I think he will start in the Premier League. And at his prices of £6 to £7, I think he might be worth taking that chance on to start for Leicester. Maybe not having the best squad. However, I think he can still score consistently in there. As we move on to Liverpool, my team, my boys, I'm really excited for the opening weekend of the season. I've watched Arne Slot's press conference this morning and he seems confident, and we also might even get a couple more signings yet by the sounds of things. They're still working on it. But Gravenberch, I think he will start this season at number 6 for Liverpool. He could put his stamp on it. He could make that position his own if he wants to. He's got the frame, he's got the stature, and who knows what he'll be able to do this season. but his prices of his 2024 cards, you're looking at anywhere from 15 to kind of £25. But if he can get in there and get his foot in the door, Ryan Gravenberch, and kind of get these kind of scores here, your 65, 70s, and make the transitions that Arnie Slot likes to do within his teams, having his under 23 utility until 2026 and having that long-term Liverpool contract, I think he could be a great pickup, not only for in-season, but for Classic as well. And we're going to give an honourable mention to Diogo Jota. If he can stay fit this season, we know he can score. He's so good. He will finish any chance that he gets. He is a bit of a premium price, and that's why I've given him an honourable mention, because he's anywhere from 30 to kind of £40. However, I think Diogo Jota, if he stays fit this season, he will be able to score greatly, as you can see where he's had his injuries, which is why we've only given him an honourable mention. But I think he will start this season. I think he will play against Ipswich, and I think he will be great for this season going forward as we move into Manchester City. How could I find anyone undervalued or underrated in that Man City starting lineup? Pep roulette every single week, not knowing who's going to play. However, Bernardo Silva, Rodri is the other one in there, but Rodri's premium price is there because he is a top scorer on this game. Bernardo Silva is a man who I have gone for. He ranges anywhere from £35 to £50 if you can get lucky, but his scores speak for themselves. When he plays, Bernardo Silva, and there's not many games he doesn't play in, but when he plays, let's come to the Premier League, he is magnificent, and he gets them peaks, he gets them scores, and you know with him, you're going to get that work rate. And I think Pep Guardiola wants to play him more central this season, which I think can enhance his scores even more from there, rather than playing in that winger role, which he has been doing. So we move into Man United. Now we've got Diogo Dalot, Mr. Consistent himself. If we come into his SO5 scores here, and we'll go to the Premier League. Mr. Consistent himself. Yes, he does have some of these lower scores, but towards the end of last season, Man United's form did drop right off. But if he can get back to his best here, like they were here, and playing in that Man United team, like Ten Hag got them playing in the Charity Shield, which I think they were unlucky to lose, I think at his price, Diogo Dalot could be a great pickup for any Manchester United fans out there. We've got his price at anywhere from £15 to £25, really. There's been a couple of higher ones above that, but I think he could be a great pickup for your team. He's got a long-term contract for Man United, and not only for this in-season, but for classic seasons going forward, being in that Portugal national team. So, an honourable mention to Rasmus Højlund. I spoke about him in my last video and his rare card, but his limited card at these prices, £25, £30, I think you can't go wrong picking one up. When he comes back into the starting lineup, which he will, if he can get back to scoring these goals, obviously the form of the whole team dropped off towards the end of last season. He also does play for that Denmark international team, so you've got that. You've also got European football for Manchester United, so he's got all of the utilities, and once he's back from injury, if he can stay fit, I think he'll have a fantastic season. So an honourable mention to Rasmus Højlund. As we go into Lewis Hall of Newcastle, could this be the breakout season for the 19-year-old? He can make that left-back spot his own, and I think he will do exactly that. A wonderful footballer. Crystal Palace wanted to sign him last season. Newcastle got there first, and he is under 23 until 2029. That is crazy. Now, as we come down here and we look at his scores towards the end of last season, where he did force his way into that starting lineup and he did get in, his scores are great. They are fantastic, and I think Lewis Hall, at the price he's at in this Newcastle team, because there are premium prices on some of these players, like your Bruno Guimaraes, Isaac, even Nick Pope, they have the premium price on. Lewis Hall, I think he does have a little bit of a premium on his price, but when you take into the account he's under 23 for 5 more years, plus the fact of Newcastle this season not having that Champions League football to worry about, I think he could have a great season for them, and I think he could really put his stamp on it, and maybe even force his way into the England team towards the end of the season. Now, we move into Forest. And Chris Wood, he's 32. We know what he's about. We know his game. He's big, he's strong, and he can also finish. He won't give your centre-back a moment's rest. He's been playing pre-season. He's scored a couple of goals. And I think at his price, for a forward in the Premier League, he did have this little peak here where he looked like prime Pele. But I think his price for a Premier League forward, likewise with Sinistera, you're looking at anywhere kind of from £10 to £15. They have started to go up over the past few hours as we get closer to the deadline. But if you can pick one of these up off of your offers, £10.99 we've got one there for. I think he will start this season for Forest. I think he could be really good. And if he can keep that purple patch of form up for £10, he can return your investment pretty quickly. Murillo is going to be an honourable shout out. The man who loves a shot from the halfway line will shoot from the halfway line, as he proved last season. And at his prices here, you've got anywhere kind of from £8 to £12. His scores are a little bit up and down. He's only 22. He's not the biggest of players, but he is Brazilian. And I think he will move on from Forest eventually to move on to a better team, because on the ball, he is absolutely fantastic. So an honourable mention to Murillo. As we move into Southampton, Taylor Harwood-Bellis, another under 23. This time you get 2 years till 2026. Under contract for a long time. His scores in the Championship, they speak for themselves. However, this is the Premier League. He is playing in Southampton, who knows how they're going to be playing this season, but his scores speak for themselves. He is a great footballer. He is up and coming, signed from Man City on a permanent deal, and his price that we are going to be looking at is anywhere kind of from £8 to £12. And I think for that chance on the risk of him, I think he's worth that risk for you. Any Southampton fans, if you're looking at building a stack, it's not going to be the most expensive thing this season. It might be a little bit painful for you. However, I do think Taylor Harwood-Bellis could still score well, even despite the fact if Southampton don't play as well as they did last year, which is to be seen. Cameron Archer also currently having a medical at Southampton, and I think he could play really, really well for them this season, and I don't think you're taking much of a chance at your £5-6 for a forward card who could play really well for Southampton and force his way in at 22 years old. So a little bit of breaking news there for you. As we go into Tottenham, the fullback, the inverting fullbacks, the bombing forward fullbacks, and Postecoglou's team do not like to defend. They like to play on the front foot. They like to attack. And a doggy is at the centre of that. Another defender, 21 years old. You get the under 23 utility for 3 more years. And I think his price that he's at now, £15 to £20. He's even less than Lewis Hall. However, he plays in that Italian national team as well. Tottenham are also in Europe, so you get that utility. You get all of it like you do with your Rasmus, your Jottas, your Gravenberch, etc. And when he plays, his scores are great. Injured towards the end of last season, but he will be back for this one. And I think Destiny Adori could be a great pickup for your SO5. As we move into West Ham, we have Pip Paqueta. He does have that cloud hanging over his head. However, we all know how good he can be, and his scores are. So I have put him in there. I've said, yes, pick him up, but be wary of it. And his price does kind of reflect that. You know, you're looking at your kind of £20 to £30. Lucas Paqueta, if he doesn't get banned, he will be unreal. West Ham have made a boatload of signings, but they are great signings. And I think Lucas Paqueta can carry on where he left off last season if he doesn't get that ban, which is hanging over his head. Which is why we've also gone for Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who does have a slight knock, but he has passed his West Ham medical. He's signed for them on a 7-year contract. And I think at the price that Wan-Bissaka is at right now, you're kind of anywhere from £10 to £20. I think he could be a great signing to your SO5. He's Mr. Consistent. As Palace fans used to saying, wingers don't like him. He'll score you your 50, your 60 points. And I think he could be great in this West Ham team this season. Finally, we're on to the final one. It's been a long old video, so if you are still here, feel free to give this video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and drop me in the comments your up and coming ballers for this Premier League season and who you think is going to have a great season for your club as we come to Wolverhampton Wanderers. And we have got Hwang Hee-chan, another forward card. We've had a mix of midfielders, forward and defenders in this video, which is what I wanted to have for you guys, but he will start the opening game of the season. He will probably play behind the striker. However, you're kind of 15 to, £10 to £15. And the fact that in this purple patch here, he was magnificent. He was getting goals and assists like they were going out of fashion. He then unfortunately got injured and fell out of the team, but he got back into it at the end of last season. They didn't have the best run of forward balls towards the end of the season, but he was still playing relatively well. And I think this season, and also having the World Cup qualification for South Korea, I think he could be a great player to have for your midweek utility as well with the international games. And we are also going to give a shout out to a new signing, Yerson Mosquera from Colombia. He's an under 23 until next year, but I think he could be a great addition to that Wolves defence this season, scoring really well towards the end of last season, getting into that Colombia squad, not playing but in the squad, but he played really well towards the end of the season for Villarreal. He can play centre-back, he can play right-back, and I think he could be a great addition to your Wolverhampton Wanderers teams or your SO5s for this season at £6 to £7, also having that under 23 utility. So guys, that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for sticking around. We've picked one or maybe two players from some teams, but I think they are players who could have great seasons. As I said, let me know in the comments anyone you think. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next one.